So please give us a call. Well, at home today, we want to welcome David and Tricia Navarez, David has developed a website called CatholicSinglescom. But you be single no more, right?
No,
okay, and so it worked.
It worked.
And so we want you to tell our listening audience all about, first of all, yourselves, and about CatholicSinglescom, how you two met, and tell your beautiful story.
Well, the site, I started back in '97, so it's been 17, 18 years just about. And my background was that I grew up Catholic my whole life. As a kid, I went to Catholic grade school, high school, and very involved in my Catholic Newman Club in college. And the impetus really was once I got out of college, the dating pool had dried up a bit, and that really kind of sparked something. I looked online. There were a few sites, Christian, that were starting to develop, but very few Catholics on them. And I guess the Holy Spirit came and just said, why not? So I decided to start it, and it's something that has really grown into this ministry, really, at this point. And we've got Catholics from all over the place, different ages, and then Tricia and I met on the site ourselves.
That's unusual,
yes.
right?
Yeah, well,
Founder of a site.
Yeah.
And you
he had first pickings, so he got to see, right? Did you get to see her before you released her?
Well, no, because I know, David, we don't advise people not to put pictures, but I didn't put a picture
Right,
up.
right.
And
Well, she did have a picture up, but it was a long shot of her on a trapeze.
Well,
far
she looked like a little ant on there.
Why did you?
so what? Well, that's the one I sent you. But so what happened was a friend of mine also met on a site and encouraged me to go on, and I dabbled and I put up a profile, and I wasn't sure that this was going to be something for me, and I really just kind of wrote a little essay, and I didn't have the picture up right away.
Not right away.
No.
Eventually. Yeah.
So nobody wrote me. I guess they, they look for the pictures first.
Of what could be a problem.
But I saw a little icon one day that said, "See who's looked at your profile." And one of the people who looked at my profile was David. Now I had no idea that he had anything to do with the site. So I was just really learning about him and reading about him. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about him, and I put it away. And I was like, I'm not really going to do this. And then I kept thinking about his profile and what he had to say. So I wrote him, and I said, look, I'm not sure I'm into this whole dating online thing. Yeah. But, it seems like we have a lot in common. Maybe, and he liked amusement parks. And so I was like, maybe we can meet up for a day and just get a new friend or something like that. And he responded. So that was pretty cool.
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen.
Yeah, well, sort of.
It was sight unseen. I didn't send you that picture until
later.
Till right before we were going to meet at the amusement park. He said, well, it'd be nice to see what you look like.
Right. So I could find you.
Exactly.
Then I
said, she knew what I looked like.
Or you put a sign like at the airport.
Yeah, there you go.
Looking for Trish.
And so I sent him that picture, like he said, of me on a trapeze, like a little dot in the back. But
that's how, people have different ways that they first connect on the site, whether it's photos or whatever. They'll talk on the phone, that kind of thing. We just sort of hit it off. We talked a lot on the phone before we met.
We did.
And,
So how long were you sharing online or by phone until you saw one another face to face?
It was probably a week or two at least. Yeah. A lot of people ask that. They go, how long should you have this online relationship before you actually meet someone? Yeah. And I usually try to encourage them, it depends on the distance, obviously. Yeah. You have some people that are going to the same parish and they meet right away. Other people live, across the country, another state or whatever. I think a month is a good sort of middle ground. Yeah. But, some people will be willing to travel and do the legwork to drive an hour and a half to see you rather than the other way around. But it depends. It depends how many phone calls you get in too, because a lot of times I think we spoke almost every day for the 2 weeks before we met.
We did.
Yeah, and that that's important because you email and you get a sense of somebody's personality through their writing and that thing, but you take it to the next level, you get on the phone, and then
you want to hear a voice.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you want to meet them obviously as soon
right.
as you can. So
it's a tool, and with the goal of meeting that person, and whether it just sparks a new friendship or whether it sparks a romance and marriage, you know, that's wonderful. But the goal is to meet in person.
That's got it's got to be part of it.
Where did you meet again, and when did you find out really who he was? Not just Dave, but the creator.
Well, I told her the first day that we met, but we had met. We were in Southern California, so we went to the downtown Disney area.
So safe. That was such a great
I mean, that's another, we can get into the safety tips too.
We lived an hour and a half away.
Yeah, we were an hour and a half away. I was in Orange County, she was in LA. Lots of traffic. And we thought, well, this is good. This is sort of in the middle.
Right.
Nice public place, kind of fun. We talked about what we liked.
Yeah.
We both liked amusement parks and that kind of thing. And a lot of times I'll suggest, well, meet for drinks or coffee or whatever. And perfect, you know, they have all kinds of coffee bars and wine bars and all that kind of thing. So we just met, and you know, you can walk up and down and just.
Did you go on the roller coaster together?
We didn't go in the park the first day.
Not the first time.
I was gonna say, I was a little upset. I was like, I thought we were going to the park, and he was.
She wanted fun.
Yeah.
Well, hey, she got a little fun there.
No, we talked like we had known each other 20 years. It was effortless. Also, Dave and I are older. You know, you have anybody on the site from, you know, your 20s on up to your 80s. And David and I were in our 40s.
So you're saying really from 20s to 80s?
Oh,
yeah. I'd say the biggest age group where we start to see people coming are people who are out of college. So mid-20s, late 20s. But I'm going to say the state of what we do today, the online in particular, and not limited to that, because single Catholics are everywhere, all age groups. But I'd say 30s, 40s, and 50s are really the majority of the people using our site and other sites like that.
30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, you know, not getting married when they're younger for whatever reason, and waiting, putting things off is kind of unfortunately the trend, for better or worse. So. Yeah, and you have people that have been married possibly before, had annulments, whatever the situation, widowed, and it's a resource that everybody really is getting used to at this point. There's more acceptance of this kind of thing, and it's you know, God bless, it's working. Obviously, we have the Holy Father coming out. You know, everybody's interested in the internet and what the good it can do and bringing people together. So that's really a part of what we do.
What does a profile look like? Like when someone says, "Oh, okay, I want to get involved. I want to put myself out there."
Is that where it starts, making a profile? Or
yes, and I do encourage pictures. Do not do what I
Don't
did.
be so funny like you.
Nobody wrote me, so I had no.
But you did pique David's interest.
I did. You know, I took a leap of faith, and I.
Well,
I put
and just
that
to be
out
fair,
there.
some people wait a little bit till they correspond, and you can send someone a photo through the site. However, as you know, we're in this digital age. A lot of people want to put a name to the face and everything. So you know,
and while we're
it
talking
does
about
pique your interest. You got to have that component.
Yeah. While we're talking about photos, and when you do put a photo, you can put multiple photos, not just one. First of all, it's your calling card. Smile. You'd be surprised how many people put up a photo and they're like, you know, you're just like, okay, I'm going to call you.
Is she going to be
So, you know, put your best foot forward.
Well,
put a picture with some friends in there. If you have an animal, a picture of you and your animal, let them get to know you through this picture collage as well as through the essays and the questionnaire that David can tell you more about.
Well, I was going to say, interestingly enough, I read a article just recently about how women respond to photos as opposed to guys, and this is only a portion of. I mean, the profile, if you decide you want to try the site out, you go and you answer questions about your faith, about what you're looking for in a date, in a partner, and you know, potential spouse. And there's a lot of questions that are important, and people really use those to sort of decide who piques their interest and who they want to start communicating with. But you know, the photo thing, I read an article that said guys who don't smile get more attention from women, and women actually who smile get more guys that are interested. So there's something going on there. I don't know what it is.
Maybe
You're
it's
always learning something new.
the strong, silent, look
People
or
are
something.
trying
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Do you have an online dating story?
We have
Please share it with us.
We have a lot of online dating stories. We actually just met up with one of our members who lives in New York City, and she's going to be getting married next year in 2015, and she met her future spouse on the site, and he was in Canada. And they were a few hours away, and she, once again, as a friendship, and it took them a while because they were, I think they were about 5 hours away.
Yeah, they have a little distance.
So she said it was about 6 months or so before they first met up, and actually she met him, and she brought her mom. And they all just kind of met up. It's not that she was young or he was flying in, and actually he was flying in with a friend of his, was a priest. So you don't have to make it this, oh my goodness, this romantic one-on-one situation. You're meeting somebody. It could be a party. You could bring friends, go out socially. Maybe you have an event. So that's what happened for them, and
Plus,
we're excited about their story.
Yeah, as I say, on the site, we also have a page of success stories.
All the different
that you can
success
read
stories.
about. There's more detail. I had the opportunity a couple years ago to invite some people in California, and we took them to dinner, and we did some interviews, and we just wanted to see, what made them tick, what attracted them, and it boiled down to their faith. I mean, that was the biggest attraction.
And if you are watching right now, and you use CatholicSinglescom, we would like for you to give us a call. 205-271-2980. If you have a story to tell about your own dating experience, 205-271-2980, or toll free, 800-221-9460. You're at home with Jim and Joy, and you make this show, so we want to hear from you.
So you might be out there and you might have some grandchildren, or you have a son or a daughter, and you're saying, hey, did you try this? Do you think that people get referred to your site from family members because they're wanting their children to get married?
We did have one letter from a gentleman, an older gentleman who was widowed, and he was in his early 70s. His daughter had met somebody on the site. So he went on the site and he met somebody.
Wow.
So
it's not just the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of nice. And sometimes, people, they always write in or share their stories. Sometimes they'll show their pictures, and like David said, we post them on the site. So you can, those are all true success stories on our site.
And it's fun. Sometimes we run into people just randomly.
Yes.
I mean, usually in a Catholic setting, but we were at a dinner, wedding reception a couple years ago. And the couple across from us met on the site, and they're like, "Really? You guys are
so neat."
And just out of the blue, and that's happened. I've had friends tell me, "Oh yeah, we recommended it," and we have a question actually as people sign up. Where did you hear about us? A lot of it is referrals. So
Now you mentioned in the profile that there are questions and an essay. You write, what's the essay?
I'll have you
well,
explain.
Yeah, essentially the profile will develop as you answer a bunch of multiple choice questions. Part of it though is essays, and we also have a personality test that we had a Catholic resource help develop with us, and lots of Catholic questions are in there as well. But the essay portion in particular, I mean, you can like the same kind of activities like baseball games or going to the movies. You might have a similar background with your upbringing. For example, we'll ask, did you grow up in a Catholic home, or not necessarily mixed Christian, home? And we'll get to the essay question where people can elaborate, because one of the things we know is that people want to get a little bit more in depth into somebody's personality to pique their interest even more than just sort of the face and the location and that kind of thing. So one of the questions that we ask is, what does it mean to you to be Catholic?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think really because, we're in this country where we have a broad definition of the word sometimes, whether it's cultural or whatever. And questions like that really bring out what your faith truly means to you. And I think a lot of people, once they get past the multiple choice part and start to read a little bit more about somebody, they'll go, oh yeah, that's a little bit more about how I share my faith.
Right.
It's not just 1, 2, 3, and you picked a number. So I think those kind of things are very important. And then, like I said, we do have this compatibility test that we use to cross-reference each other, and we have a little score, and it'll say like, what's your Catholic quotient? And it just brings together a little component that I think people are really after, because ultimately, why someone would come to our site per se over, say, a secular site is really that their faith is probably the number one or two thing in their life, and that's what they're really hoping to get someone on the same page with. So.
Which is so important, because it's kind of like, how Catholic are you?
Yeah.
Are you Catholic in name only?
Yeah.
And am I just going to go here because maybe I'll make my mother happy? I'm going to find a good Catholic girl, but my faith, I go to church twice a year.
And there's a question: do you attend Mass daily?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody said, that I go for Christmas and Easter, and then they talk about their faith, you kind of know if that's really what you want, or you want somebody that goes daily.
But you allow their answers to stand.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was thinking about this, I was saying, well, maybe there's a requirement to get on in terms of you defining what it means to be Catholic. But you're saying there may be some of that, but they're able really to say how deep they are into the faith, or they can say, I'm a holiday kind of season Catholic. I go, and you let that stand, because the other person needs to know. You can't define for them what they're saying.
If we didn't ask those questions, and they really, really wanted to get on our site or some other site, they would be able to sort of manipulate how they presented themselves. This way, I think we get more of an honest, insight into the person. So.
Some people want to get back to the faith.
Right.
Some people are saying, well, this is, and that's why they're on the site, because they're trying to get, closer.
And you're trying to find a mate to say, I want to take this journey with somebody.
Exactly.
And I want to go deeper with the Lord, but this is how I've been. But and the beautiful thing is that people are older, that usually, like you said, the dating pool dries up after college, and it is kind of scary. You get out of college and your friends, everybody disappears, everybody goes into the career world, and if you don't find your mate, where are you going to find her? And so how is the church ministering to Catholic singles? How do you, what's happening to Catholic singles in parishes and in a diocese?
That's a good question, but
I think that's part of what we address. I mean, we try to educate and do some ministry on the site. Going back to the questionnaire, for example, there's a couple of places where we'll say, well, this is what it means to be eligible to marry, for example. This is what it means for a couple of different topics, and we'll say this is what the church explains and their position. And we also have some resources. We do apologetics. We have a section where we have Q&As. We have a priest who's a chaplain.
Good.
So we have people coming in that may be more cultural at the time, that may get more back into their faith. I know that a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years, they start going to sites like ours, and they're like, well, I really want to reconnect. And if we have a little bit of a hand in that, I think it's a blessing. So. Whatever we can do to bring people together. I mean,
because something you just said, a lot of times when you're in church, you back of the bulletin, you have your young adult group, and you have your, it'll say singles, and it'll say 60 and over.
Right.
We're meeting down at the grill this week. You don't have a lot for that middle group. A lot of career-minded people who are out there, 30s, 40s, 50s.
And families really are what most, most of the ministry is aimed at, and for good reason. I think that the church will minister to the youth, like we talked about, and other groups, the families in particular, with the kids going to the schools and that kind of thing. But it's not something that has maybe enough attention just yet, because it's such a varied age group. I don't think if people realize that we were talking about singles, we're not talking about kids in their 20s or even younger. We're talking about 30, 40s, and 50-year-olds that are really in need, and this is something that we try to, I guess, fill the gap.
Joe, I think
we have someone on the phone. We have Caroline. Caroline, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy. Your question or your comment for David or Tricia?
Hi, my name's Carolyn McGuire, and my husband and I met on Catholic Singles 14 years ago. We married in 2000. I was an attorney. He worked for Verizon, and I lived in New Jersey. He lived in New York, so we probably would not have met otherwise. So in any event, we married in our late 30s. We went on to have two beautiful children, two girls, Mary and Emily. And then we found out that we were going to have a third child, and I was sitting at my desk one day, and my doctor called, and she said, you know, I need to tell you that there's a 1 in 10 chance that your child's going to have trisomy 18. And I asked her, what's trisomy 18? And she said, well, it's incompatible with human life. Trisomy 21 is Down syndrome. Trisomy 18 is Edwards syndrome. Kids with trisomy 18 seldom live very long. They may live seconds. I think the oldest living trisomy 18 child that I know about lives to be maybe 20, but that's very unusual. So in any event, the first thing we did was go to our priest, and we knew that Elizabeth was going to come into the world and be sick, very sick. And, you know, I had to carry her all that time, knowing that she might not even take a breath. And she was actually born on December 20th in 2006, and we brought her home. We were able to bring her home. My youngest daughter used to say, Mommy, I just want her to come for one night for a sleepover.
Ah, precious.
So she got to come for a sleepover and stay for 3 months. And she passed away on March 19th, 2007, St. Joseph's Feast Day. And in between, she touched an awful lot of people. And she also made a lot of people question how they felt about pro-life issues and, you know, what is the value of human life. And she was a little celebrity, and we would have never traded that time. But I did go on to have severe depression and post-traumatic stress. Unfortunately, we witnessed her die in kind of a tragic way, and my husband's had to deal with my depression and all the grief, and our 2 little children and their grief. And I think had we not met on Catholic Singles and been really centered, we would not have made it through, because they tell you that a lot of families who lose a child, the parents wind up in divorce.
Carolyn, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We thank you for this call, and you really understand what this show, which is really a family, is about. Thank you for trusting us with your joys and your sorrows. It's just absolutely beautiful. Give us a call. The rest of you out there, feel free to call us. I'm sure the number's up there on your TV as you're looking, or on the computer. We want you to join the show. That must be such a great blessing for you all. I mean, to hear this family, marriage and family being established, that they're walking through suffering and sorrow and seeing what's really important, and how your ministry, your apostolate, has really strengthened them in so many ways. It's wonderful.
It does. And you know, even with David and I, you know, having the same faith, we could get in an argument, be upset. We go to church on Sunday, we leave laughing. I mean, we're like, okay, like everything is okay. Our faith is centering us. It's what it's about, and it really does help you get through those difficult times. It's supposed to.
Carolyn shared so beautifully. I mean, it was in Catholic Singles, she anchored her faith with another soulmate, and so that happens in life. You know, there are trials, there are sufferings. We dealt with a client like that at our center, but to have that, and to have that support and that strength, and to know that God will bring her and a whole family through, and she will be with her baby one more time in heaven for all eternity. Absolutely. You know.
Yeah.
So you were sharing, Dave, that, I don't know if you use the word community, but it really does seem like a community. Yeah. And so it's not just getting, you know, compatibility and getting matched up, like you said. There's kind of direction, there's apologetics, sharing what the faith is about, defending the faith, what your faith means, and maybe you have some direction for them, or kind of coaching, and all that's really important, and really stayed with this family.
That's what's important. I mean, as we developed the site over the years, the sense of community that I had in college with my group of Catholic friends, and all through, you know, my younger years, that's really the foundation. And, you know, ultimately what we want to do is help bring families, Catholic families, together. Right. You start out single, but, you know, the goal is to be a Catholic family stronger than you were before. Right. And having these resources and having all these other things on the site really, I mean, we have chat rooms and things, that really brings together that sense that.
And we get in the chat room. I mean, I get in there. I talk to the members. You know, a lot of sites, you know, some of these bigger sites and they're corporate. I don't know how many people who are actually running the site get in there and talk to their members. I love to hear from them. You know, I'm going to be meeting one, hopefully this Saturday. We're doing a blood drive in Los Angeles and inviting all our members to come to Providence St. Joseph Hospital. That's okay to plug that. Come on and down. And I'm going to get to meet some of our members. And I love that. So, you know, maybe our site helps bring someone into their life and they get married, but if it doesn't, maybe they met a new friend. Beautiful. Maybe just this sense of community is helping them through this time, this journey of singlehood.
And part of that is that you think you're the only single Catholic person out there. Like everybody's married. You go to church. I mean, sometimes you go into some churches, everybody's married, and you're that one man out, right? Or that one woman out. And so you say, okay, this is my community because look at all these other people. They're Catholic and they're single, so it's not just me.
No.
You know, which is important.
And our mantra has always been faith, fellowship, and love. You know, in whatever order. That's you're going to be single for a while. Obviously, so you need your tools, you need resources and things, and that's kind of what we try to help with.
Yeah, and embrace that time.
Yeah. We have an email. So the question is, I know that honesty is the best policy, but what should you leave out of your profile without seeming dishonest? And this is Marilyn from White Plains, New York.
Okay, White Plains. I grew up in Carmel, so. Do you want to take that one first? Or?
Well, you know, you should be as honest as possible. But you don't reveal everything. I mean, if you met somebody in person, if you're at a job interview, for example, you're not going to tell everybody your worst traits right off the bat. So, I mean,
they'll find the mountains on.
We've all got our quirks.
Exactly.
Everybody's eccentric to some degree. So, you know, you got to really highlight what you love about yourself, what you think somebody else is going to like and love about yourself, and talk about those kind of things. The other stuff will come up eventually, you know. And like I said, you put your best foot forward. You put a nice photo, and you talk about all the good things in your life, and you know what you bring to the table. And it really, that's what'll interest somebody. You know, that's what'll pique their curiosity and want. And if something develops from there, whether it's a friendship or whatever, that's the starting point. That's where you begin. Yeah,
and I think David raised a good point about, you know, how much to reveal about yourself personally. And then there's also safety issues. Just like if you met anybody out socially or in a bar, you're not going to tell them your address, where you live, or have somebody pick you up on the first date. Get to know this person. Go out and meet them. Take your own cars. Bring your friends. And meet each other's people in their lives first before you go to that next level. And that's with anybody. You could be at the library and meet somebody.
We tell people that as they join. We give them some tips on.
So tell us about some of those safety things that you say.
Well, you know, like she said, you know, tell somebody where you're going. If you can do it during the day in a nice public place, like we met tons of people around, you know, we could go get coffee. I always tell people, you know, maybe you carve out an hour or two on the first time you meet, and that should be great, because if you know, hey, if it didn't work out, you spend a nice hour or two with somebody you got to know. If it did, that's a good starting point, and you go back later. But always let somebody know where you're at. You know, be safe. Don't give too much personal info right away. And that's just sort of the common sense kind of things that we really stress. And we email everybody that when they first join, so they know. You don't want to give somebody, you know, too much. Too much information can be either drive somebody away anyway because they don't get it, or there's no mystery. You want to have a little bit there.
Also, I think an important fact you mentioned about people, maybe they're not 2 hours away and they can't meet up, and they're a little long distance, so they have a longer relationship of more of a pen pal and getting on the phone. And if somebody asks you for money because they want to come visit you, that is a red flag. I mean, and most people know that, but you know, there's some people out there, you see it on Dateline and all those places, and they go through their bank accounts. No. And you may think you've grown to know this person, but I think that's a number one taboo. If somebody's going to meet you
that's why it's important,
and they have a lot of integrity, they will find the way and the means. I have friends who lived over 6 hours away, and you know, eventually he came down to meet her in Los Angeles, He put himself up in a hotel.
Right,
They
right.
met at a public place. Even
Yeah.
though he flew in, he didn't go to her house
Right.
and meet her and pick her
Right.
up. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
and you want to say most people kind of know this, and
Right.
it's common sense, but there's
But
some
not
people.
all. Yeah.
No, and that's the kind of
You
thing. You know, we talked about like how long, a month or two, depending on the distance, is good. Because eventually, you know, if somebody says, "Hey, I can't make it at the last minute," and it's continual, then
Right.
you know you kind of wonder. But generally speaking, when you have that good feeling about somebody, you make the effort to call them on the phone, get to know them a little bit, and then you meet in a nice, safe, you know, place. And you always let somebody know where you're at.
And you do
Yeah.
background checks? Or do people do background
yeah.
checks?
It's all self-reported. Yeah,
Okay.
people can do background checks on their own, but the you know, not to talk too much about that, only because it's kind of a tricky situation. If you think about it, anybody could be on the other side of the computer.
Sure.
And there was a thing a couple of months ago or a couple of years ago talking about, well, maybe we can do more of this or that. The problem is you can never absolutely be certain who's on the other side. I mean, so to some degree, you can do a background check. I'd still caution people that if they do one, to still be to err on the side of caution, because you never know.
Yeah.
And whether you met somebody in a bar or a restaurant or even at church in some cases,
Yeah.
Right, you don't know who you're
you
meeting
don't know.
either. Right.
And even at that point, if you're going to invest, you know, a lot of time, you might talk to their friends and stuff. That's what's good about getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
Their family, their friends
Right.
eventually.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
meet somebody for say 6 months and you're going out, you start to date and socialize, you know, get to know their coworkers, their family, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's
Yeah.
always a big help.
And usually they're going to be saying, he's a great guy, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
be careful. You know what I mean? I mean,
Oh, that
somebody's out
happens.
there. Right.
I-
Oh, yeah.
I met a guy a couple years ago, and more of a business kind of thing. And his brother comes up to me and goes, "Hey, watch out for this guy."
Yeah.
And he was serious.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, thanks. You
Thanks
know,
for
give me
the
some tips." Friends and family, they're
Right.
they're
They're going to be your best read.
yeah,
we got some.
exactly.
Okay, we got a caller from Michigan. Jim, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy. Your question or your comment?
Hello.
Go
Hey.
right ahead. Welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy.
Yes, I just had a question. Our church has a site that says Catholic Match, and then I see your Catholic Single. I'm a recent widower, unfortunately, so I'm going at this at a snail's pace, but I'm in my early 60s and still active, and I just felt that maybe at some point I'd like to meet somebody again with the same strong faith as I do, so I didn't know if one site looked at people in this age group more than others, and what your recommendations were.
I think both sites do.
Yeah.
They're a reputable site too.
To be honest with you, pretty much all websites nowadays that deal with online dating at all cater to pretty much any age group, because there's, I think I mentioned earlier, we're in a place where there's more singles than marrieds right now, and it's all age groups. It's 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, up to 80s. So, you know, take the chance when you're ready. Don't feel pressured. I mean, being single, there are ways and times to embrace it, and you know, try it if you like. You know, you can kind of see what's out there, and if your faith's important, like it sounds like it is, our site might be the one to try. Yeah.
It seems like there's so many nuances to being single these
Yeah.
days. You know, like he's lost his wife, he's working through his own grief. You know, maybe I want to get back in. And then you've got divorced
Yeah.
people. How do you deal with divorced Catholics, and is the marriage annulled or not in the conversation? And or then
Yeah.
you've got people in their 30s and 40s that are single, they haven't been married, they're not divorced, they're just 30, 40, 50 and haven't been married. And how does that all work its way out in the profile and conversations?
Yeah,
and
I mean that's the
especially
conversation.
if they're divorced.
Right.
How does
right.
that? How does that?
Well, of course, one of the questions that we have is whether you're eligible, and we explain for marriage eventually, explain the Catholic Church's position on annulments and that kind of thing, and we give resources for that. So
So a person doesn't have to have had an annulment. They can say, you know, I'm divorced. This is the point where I'm at in this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Fellowship.
oh yeah, I mean,
Meeting other people
exactly.
who are divorced and maybe haven't gone through an annulment. maybe they both talk to each other. Maybe it's a process they want to go through at the same time.
Yeah.
I had a friend that, same thing, who met her husband, and he hadn't gone through the annulment process yet, and they were dating, and then he started the annulment process.
Yeah, and we're kind of in that place right now where, with Pope Francis commenting on this, you know, what the rules are going to be in the future. I mean, we talk about annulments, and I mean, two divorced Catholics that are very good Catholics that may, in this journey, decide, well, we want to get to the next level, and we want to get married, and they'll go and consult with their local priest or parish and decide what's right for them, if they need to get the annulment, and how to go about doing it correctly. And who knows what you know the process will be, if it's, I guess, what streamlined is to some degree. A lot of people are talking about that as well. So,
and you may meet in the chat room, and you might be able to talk to a fellow member. Maybe it's you know, the chat room. It's not always a guy talking to a girl. It's a group, and there may be other women and saying, hey, have you done this yet, or you know, sharing their experience. But I think that's where the community part comes in. Like we're talking about, the dialogues are open, and people start talking about where they're at in their journey, whether they're ready for marriage, or they're really hungering for fellowship at this point to get reconnected to their faith. Like our caller, it's a first step to meet somebody new. Maybe he'll meet somebody else who's widowed as well, and has gone through that experience.
And we're in the holiday season right now too, so that's a whole other
You're doing a tremendous work in uniting people together. Joy and I often say that we believe that marriage and the family is God's plan to transform the world. And CatholicSinglescom, your great work, is really giving momentum to that hope. More and more married people, the building of family, those who are truly called to the single, consecrated life, that's their calling, that's a blessing. But we're grateful for what you're doing. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for having us.
Well, when we come back, we'll be joined by Father John Paul and Joan Lewis, so don't go away. You're at home with Jim and Joy, and we'll be right back.